We are back from executive session. For last executive session, no actions taken at this time. I want to thank. We have Mr. Scott Lewis in front of us today. Thank you for your interest in the position of interim fire chief of South King Fire. Board members are going to ask some pre-written questions here in open session and in executive session. Please be as concise as possible in answering questions in order that we can provide equal time to all candidates. So we are running just a little bit behind. I don't want to short you of any of your answers either, but please be concise. We will now begin our interview questions in open session. But before we do that, I'm Chair Greg Russo. To my left here is Commissioner Bill Fuller. To my right, Commissioner Carolyn Vedino, and the far right, Commissioner Bill Gates. We have online Commissioner Craig Burris, who's virtual right now because he's out of town. But I'm going to start with Commissioner Gates. You have the first question.
What makes you unique for the position of interim fire chief of South King Fire?
Very good. And I just retired at the first of the year, so I'm active. I'm current. I haven't been on the shelf a long time. When I retired, they brought in an interim chief for my spot, so I've been communicating with a couple of the placement firms, as well as the Western Fire Chiefs Association, about doing some interim work. And in fact, I didn't even have to update my resume before I sent it to you because I had just done it to do some interim work. I took the first month off. And so then I was ready to get back in the game, as they say. So it was, the timing was very good. I also work for a city department, but we have 3 smaller cities that we cover by contract and a fire district. So I'm used to reporting out to multiple jurisdictions, because every jurisdiction is we're their fire department. We're not only Gresham Fire Department, we're their fire department. So I'm familiar with operating in that role. We have a lot of similarities with your department, which you may have noticed in my letter of interest. So I think I'm well suited, and I think the timing is good for both your fire district and my talents.
Who is your ideal leader and why?
Dwight D. Eisenhower. He had the ability to bring together literally multiple armies for a common cause. We talk about building relationships and getting things done. He's the guy. So I would say ultimately Dwight Eisenhower would be my leadership role model.
Please describe your experience as a fire chief of a fire department or chief executive officer of an organization.
So as a fire chief for the city of Gresham, we operate out of 6 stations, 6 engines, a truck company, a battalion chief every day. We also share a station with the city of Portland. They have a very long border, common border, and as annexations happened, they annexed over a fire district and ended up with a station 1 block off. If you look at how you build a fire department, you don't put a fire station on your border. If you look at how you deliver fire and emergency services, you look at who's around you and you place your stations according to their stations. Because with automatic vehicle locator, that border is invisible now. It's not like it used to be. So we staff that station, 4 firefighters on the engine, 2 on a 2-person rescue. And for us, Portland is certainly the 800-pound gorilla, or a 30-station fire department, but we've built a relationship where we can work very well together. Also been responsible for the budget for about the last 18 years that I've been in Gresham. Even when I wasn't the fire chief, I was in charge of the administration, which built the budget. Our budget for the current fiscal year, they run July. July is about $40 million, a little less than your total budget, but very similar in size. We have Firefighter paramedics, AMR does our ambulance transport, which isn't exactly the model here, but it's similar where you have Medic One and such. So again, used to working with a lot of different partners. Very good labor relations. We have a labor management meeting once a month, more often as needed. We can be come to issues from different sides, but still leave the room without ruining the relationship, because we're still going to be working together tomorrow, even if we disagree on a particular issue. So we just went through union contract negotiations. We settled them just a little over a year ago. So I've been doing that ever since I've been in Gresham. I've been through 6 contracts with Gresham, a couple in my fire department when I was in Ohio. So I'm really good at labor relationships and communicating from a city perspective or the management perspective.
What have you done to improve your knowledge in the last year?
To be perfectly honest, we had in 2023, we had 2 line of duty deaths. One was a medical incident. The guy was at work and had a pulmonary embolism. And another was a cancer death. I believe your district went through that a few years ago. But those were our first recognized line of duty deaths were in 2023. Those are tough on an organization. So I learned a lot about resiliency, taking care of your men and the women that work for you. And while it's tough on everybody, the calls keep coming. The phone still rings, the bells still go on, and the lights still come on. And so I learned about how resilient I really am. I also learned, unfortunately, about memorial services and taking care of families. And so those were the things I learned. But then in 2024, we had a firefighter critically injured, spent 103 days in the hospital in the burn unit. And again, how resilient my firefighters are, how resilient my officers are to keep everybody up, keep everybody going, taking care of the family. I literally spent hundreds of hours in the waiting room outside the burn unit just so somebody from the fire department was there. Not that we had to be, but we had to be. So I have, those are the things I've learned mostly in the last year.
What is your philosophy about labor relations?
All too often I hear somebody say it's the union's contract. It's not the union's contract. It's the contract between the fire district or the fire department, or in my case, the city and the union. Both parties sign that contract. It's not the union's contract. It's an agreement between the parties. I think coming to labor relations from that perspective, as opposed to it's about them and not about us, adds a lot of value. And there's nothing in that contract that we didn't agree to. Now, we may have given something up or taken something for it, but we agreed to those contracts when we signed them. So I don't think either side has really a complaint when you've been through the process, whether you go through mediation or binding arbitration, or you settle it yourselves, whatever the method is that you get to the end, it's yours to live with and live by. So I think that's good. I think being open to conversation at any time is where you need to be. Every now and then, you get that phone call on the weekend and it's the union president and say, "Hey, chief, I got some news for you." And it's usually not good news, but you work through it together, because that firefighter who's his union member is my firefighter as well. So I think approach it as everybody is part of the team as opposed to us and them.
Do you have experience in interest arbitration?
I do have experience in interest arbitration. In my former life before Oregon, we went to interest arbitration twice with a union contract when I was on the city side after I promoted out of the union. I've also been through interest arbitration for discipline, where we had a firefighter whose off-duty behavior we thought was beyond the acceptable norms. And after that discipline, we went through interest arbitration for that firefighter's discipline.
Do you understand the difference between position-based and interest-based bargaining?
I certainly do. Position-based, like I said, is where it's us and them. You take different positions. And interest-based is where you look at what's in the best interest of the organization and the members of that organization. I must say that since I've been with Gresham, we've always done the interest approach. We've not been to binding arbitration or as a result of it. We did go through mediation one time, and it was a math error. We were both looking at things from different perspectives. It had to do with wages and how you did your math. And it was a very short arbitration. We made our point. The arbitrator went and came back and said, how about this? We got our heads together and said, oh. So interest arbitration has always been, at least for the last 20 years, how we've operated.
Based on your knowledge of South King Fire and its demographics, identify the program areas you would focus on and describe how you would intend to undertake the task of an interim chief during the first 6 months on the job.
So in the fire service, we have something called a CAN report. The battalion chief will call to the crew inside and ask for a CAN report. That's conditions, actions, and needs. And that's kind of the approach I would take. Come in, learn the conditions on the ground, find out what actions are in place and what are the needs are. So I was pleased to see that you have that bridge strategic plan for the last couple of years. The reports I've been able to see publicly say you've got most of those done. So where are you on those and where do you need to go? To be perfectly honest, unless your interim chief is from inside, it's going to be a pretty steep learning curve. And having done that, moved from one organization into another one, I have some experience with that. So again, it would be my plan for the first 30, 60 days would be, where are we now and where are we going and how do we get there? Now, your question, sorry, based on what I know about the fire district. I don't know a lot. I've learned what I could find out in the last 4 or 5 days. Like I said, I took the month of January off, and on Wednesday I saw your posting. So it was a pretty quick turnaround time from then to here. But I'm pleased with the opportunity. So I won't try and mislead you and say I know all of your issues and all of your concerns. I do know that you've been through several chiefs in the last 4 or 5 years. That's tough on an organization, no matter what those things led to that, whether it was retirements or whatever else. So being a steady hand and continuing to move the organization forward. Like I said in my letter, not just being a substitute teacher, not just sitting back and taking things as they come.
Fire departments and law enforcement agencies in Seattle, as well as across the state, are finding it very difficult to attract qualified and diverse applicants for firefighter positions. Discuss your philosophy and techniques relating to recruitment and retention of personnel.
So one of the things that we've been successful with, something that the district just started or started back, is the Explorer program, getting those high school kids interested in the profession early so they can make some good decisions in life. If you're recruiting 20-year-olds, what you did in high school matters. If you're recruiting 30 years old, high school is probably long enough that we're not going to judge you on that. So getting in front of those, that supply line, that supply chain of young adults early is very beneficial. At least it has been in our experience. But what we also have is we have population groups that don't think that they could be a firefighter because they don't see firefighters that look like them. And we have a pretty diverse group. We have African Americans, and we have Asians, and we have Pacific Islanders, and we have several women. And they just want to do a good job. They want to be great firefighters. They don't necessarily want to be the poster men and women for the fire service, but they also understand that by being on that poster, they show that people that look like them can do that job. And we believe that's important.
What would be your position as to working in a collaborative capacity with the district's executive director? Do you feel that that would hinder your ability to perform your supervisory role within the organization?
So when I looked at your department or your district, it was important to me that you be a district of enough size that you have a director, you have finance, you have HR as part of your business model, where you don't have just 2 or 3 people and the fire chief trying to run the whole darn thing. I come from a city department where I have an HR department, I have a finance department. Personally, I reported to the city manager for years. So it's a little closer to what I'm used to experiencing than maybe somebody that comes from a smaller fire district where everything revolves around the fire chief. There's no joke that says, how many fire chiefs does it take to change a light bulb? It's just one. He stands there and the world revolves around him. So my wife told me not to tell any jokes tonight. So anyhow, I think that building a working relationship with the executive manager like this district is laid out will be not a difficulty for me because of my experience, my background, and how I worked until January 1st.
Mr. Lewis, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what is the largest fire department you have ever managed, and how does this department compare in size and geographic area?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Gresham Fire Department, we were Gresham Fire and Emergency Services until a few years ago, and then we renamed, kind of like your district did. So we cover 61 square miles. Our population coverage is 153,000. We're doing that from 6 stations and 6 1/3 because we staffed that Portland station 1/3 of the time. Currently, we're running 3-person engine companies, 4 people on the truck, and we have 2 2-person rescues, which are basically pickup trucks that respond to the lower acuity calls. Now, we still let them go to fires. They're still firefighters and firefighter EMTs. They still go to fires and such. We don't say you can only go to medical calls. But by them going on those medical calls, that leaves that fire engine, that big red truck there for the more critical calls. So we use that as a way to reduce response times and improve response reliability by having fire engines in service. The most expensive thing you can do is build a brand new fire station, buy $1 million fire engine, and put 12 people in it over 3 or 4 shifts. So if you can cover geographically, adding resources as opposed to adding brick and mortar is an alternative. It can be a bridge to whatever's next for you. So current budget in Gresham has a pay grade allocation list of 132 firefighters, or pardon me, 132 total people. So that includes a recruit academy that's going on now. We just did a lateral entry academy, and then another academy that's going to start in April. Again, I was on the front end of all those, and that work continues now that I'm gone.
What do you look for in a job, and how does this job measure up?
I think the job has to be aligned. It has to be aligned with me, and I have to be aligned with the job. I've had two full-time, long-term careers after high school. Those after high school jobs. Then I worked 20 years for a fire department in Ohio and 22 years for a fire department in Gresham, Oregon. I have a long history or the demonstrated history of sticking with something. I don't bounce around. I go to work and I get my head down, and I get the work done, and I'm very loyal. So I look for some place where I can add value and where my experience is a good match. So from Ohio to Gresham, It was a couple more stations than we were running in Ohio. It was a move up, and then I learned and developed through there. Here, it's a little different where it's a district and not a city, and a few more fire stations and a few more people, but I think it's an opportunity for me to continue to grow. I'm not looking for someplace where I can sit back and put my feet up on the desk where everything's peachy. It's just not in me.
Mine? Oh, describe the approaches you have used to promote diversity in your previous positions and the results of those approaches.
We're fortunate to not be a civil service department where you give a written exam and the candidates are placed on a list based on their score. We use NTN for an exam, excuse me, and then everybody on that exam that's successful is in a pool of qualified candidates. And our procedure allows us to hire from that pool of qualified candidates, as opposed to promoting or, only taking recruits or applicants off a numbered list. So by having that pool of qualified candidates, you can look for people and not how they fit in, but what they bring in to your organization. So I think that approach has worked well for us. I'll be perfectly honest, most of the people that apply for firefighting jobs look like I did 40 years ago, not like I do now, where most of them sitting across from us are going to be young white males, because we haven't done a very good job, and I mean the fire service as a whole, of letting people know that this job is out there, that it's a good job, it pays well, it has great benefits, and it really is worth their time investigating. So getting people to know about it, advertise what it needs to be. Like, we do job fairs trying to get people to look a year down the road. We only take applicants that have an EMT basic already. You're not going to find a very diverse pool of candidates, even with just the EMT basic as a hurdle to get into the mix. So we have designed and talked about including EMT basic as part of our recruit academy. Unfortunately, the state of Oregon makes hosting an EMT basic class more difficult than they should, but it's still something we're looking at. We have to get accredited to teach the class. The vocational school that teaches it now, they don't know how to handle it on a 40-hour week. It's 2 nights a week over 2 terms, and it's just a mess. And we can't do that with a recruit academy. So we're looking at ways to make that part of our thing, so it's not a hurdle for people coming into the organization.
Describe what approaches you have used to work more closely with the business community and the results that you have achieved.
So a lot of our work with the business community comes around expansion, development, tenant improvements of office buildings or commercial spaces and those kind of things. So in conjunction with the building department, we hold a monthly developers meeting so they can tell us their concerns and we can tell them why things are the way they are. So we can learn from each other as to what to expect. And we found that has a lot of value. When I first got to Gresham, the fire marshal had been an engineer. And no disrespect to engineers, because I want that bridge to hold me when my car goes across it. But engineers tend to be very linear thinkers. And if the code says this, this is how you apply the code, and this is the result. And sometimes the code needs, how do you get them there, as opposed to having a hard line. So in my tenure with Gresham, with people that come into that office, they also tend to be very linear thinkers. They think the code is black and white. The code isn't black and white. the authority having jurisdiction, the fire district or the fire department, has some wiggle room there. And sometimes you have to apply that. So looking at what the community needs, what the company needs, the business community needs, and then how you get them there, as opposed to come back when you have it figured out.
Describe what approaches you've used to work more closely with neighborhoods or homeowners associations and the results you've achieved.
Neighborhoods associations are not managed, but coordinated through the city. And different neighborhoods have had different levels of success and buy-in from their neighborhoods. We have a standing offer to attend any neighborhood community event or meeting. Just invite us, and we'll either have the local engine company come there, we'll have a staff officer if it's somebody, a specific complaint or concern. Some neighborhoods are worried about wildland fire more than others are, so we'll send somebody who's got an expertise or a specialty in whatever their area is. What we know is that when you are always there, you build trust. If you wait until you're putting on a levy and then you go out and say, hey, let us come to your meeting and tell you, you don't have that. They know why you're there. You're there to sell your levy effort. So by always being involved with your communities, you build that trust. They believe you when you say, hey, we need to do something different. We need a little more from you, and this is what we're going to do with it. So my experience has been, if you're open and honest and there all the time when they want you and not just when you want them, it works. Yeah. Passed our first operating levy in over 30 years in Gresham back in May. And it was because people understood, because they've seen this, they've been there, and other city agencies and the police department, not as much. So anybody tells you that fire departments carry the day when it comes to levies, it's true.
Mr. Lewis, a female firefighter complained to you that a male officer has made unwanted sexual advances. How would you handle this situation?
I'd immediately go to the HR director and let that start there. If I'm going to be the decision maker in possible discipline, I can't be the investigator in the discipline. I would be hurt because that female firefighter is going through that. I'd like to think that we have an organization of respect and trust where you don't have to worry about that. But I've learned that as long as you hire from the human race, they will have human weaknesses and make mistakes. So it will happen. I'd like to think it wouldn't. But again, my reply would be, we would start off at the HR office because they can do their independent investigation. Again, if it's a fire officer, a captain, or a lieutenant, my experience has been battalion chiefs are not well suited for that level of personnel investigation. So, if somebody's not coming to work on time or they're leaving the rig dirty or something like that, sure, company officers and battalion chiefs are fine for that. Something of this level would immediately go to HR because they're going to have the skill set and the knowledge on how to proceed with that.
An employee, excuse me, an employee under your supervision does not get along with anyone. How would you handle this situation?
I think it depends on who the employee is and what the feedback is and what you hear. Is it an ongoing problem? Is it something that he's been like this? And I'm assuming it's a he, not necessarily. Like I said, we have several females. But have they been like this their whole career? Or is this a change in behavior? And and then the idea is to counsel and teach and lead. And sometimes that's all they need. They need directed to the right path. And so I've done this numerous times when I was a captain. We had firefighters that need a little course correction. As a chief officer, I've had battalion chiefs that have needed course corrections. The worst thing you can do is let them continue, because all it does is drive a wedge between everybody else. Now, it's been my experience, everybody wants everybody else held accountable, but maybe not, they don't necessarily want everybody held accountable, because that would include them. So, what are the standards? What are the expectations? And people should know what the expected behavior is and acceptable and what's not. You can't just wait and say, we'll know it when we see it. You should emulate the behaviors that you want people to follow. And sometimes you have somebody that has something going on in their life you don't know about. Like I said, is this new behavior? Has something changed? And then you should engage in a conversation and find out. But if you know you have a problem, you need to address the problem, because it'll only get worse. If it's left to fester, then you're going to end up with, it's going to not only reflect on you, you're responsible for it. So I think I know how to approach those things. I think you emulate the behavior up front. You're observant. You don't have to wait for somebody to tell you that, Bill's a pain and nobody likes Bill. Okay, what's wrong with Bill and how did he survive so far?
Thank you.
You have to give a performance evaluation of an employee. How do you approach it?
So I think they should know it's coming. It should be scheduled. They should also be expecting it. If I bring a chief officer in and I give them an evaluation and they're hearing all the things for the first time, then I haven't done my job. If you sit around with a notepad with people's names on it, you make lists, and then 6 months later you bring them in and you say, on March you did this, in April you did that, then what have I been doing for the last 6 months to let that happen? I had an assistant chief who gave an evaluation to a battalion chief, and he prepared it and I reviewed it, and I said, he knows all this. No, we haven't met yet. And I said, you have this list and you haven't talked to him about any of those things. Well, no, I haven't. Well, I said, then you're going to start with a conversation, not start with an evaluation, because an evaluation should not be a surprise. It should be a reflection on the conversations you've already had.
What are some of the major trends that will be impacting fire service over the next decade, and how well do you think South King Fire is positioned to address any trends that may impact us?
I think you started that conversation earlier when you say recruitment and retention. It's not quite free agency yet, where a firefighter or a lieutenant can go to wherever they want, but certainly the applicant pool is much shallower than it used to be. So I think that's an issue, and getting in front of that and building that bench strength of people so that people want to come to your fire district is important. This board has had conversations about delivery windows on specialized fire apparatus when you're waiting. Like I said, we have 3 fire engines on order. 30 months is our delivery window on fire engines. Ladder truck can be 4 years. So what does that look like? And I'm reading things that say it's going to get better, but it's only getting incrementally better. What used to be 36 months is now 30 months, which is still 18 months longer than it used to be. So I think that is a continuing issue. I think increases of call volume is an issue. I think how you respond to those, and not always is a big red truck with a bunch of firefighters on it the appropriate response. And what that looks like can vary from agency to agency. whether, I know you have a mobile integrated health program, which you can send people and talk to them and maybe find out what's going on in their lives. In my department, we have nursing students. So our CARES program is completely different from other people's CARES program, but we have nursing students and they spend a term working for us and taking those referrals from our companies and going out and meeting with Mr. Smith or Mr. and Mrs. Smith so that they're not calling us 14 times in a month and those types of things. So being aware of that. And then 10 years from now, I don't know how we're going to pay for us. We are an expensive operation. And man, are we pricing ourselves out of business? What's that going to look like? So those are my biggies. People, tools and equipment, people we respond to, and budgets. Used to be you could buy a ladder truck for $1,000 a foot, which means if you bought a 100-foot ladder, you could buy it for $100,000. New ladder truck is literally $2 million.
Okay, thank you. That's going to close our open session. So the board convened executive session for interim fire chief interviews pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101G. To evaluate the qualifications of an applicant for public employment or to review the performance of a public employee. However, subject of RCW 42.30.1404, discussion by governing body of salaries, wages, and other conditions of employment to be generally applied within the agency shall currently be open to the public. And when a governing body elects to take final action hiring, setting the salary of an individual employee or class of employees, or discharging or disciplining an employee, that action shall be taken in meeting open to the public. Action may or may not be taken after executive session. Joining the board in executive session would be Executive Director Ganem, Executive Secretary Perry, and Legal Counsel. So at this time, we'll recess for 2 minutes to get everyone transferred into executive session. We anticipate executive session lasting about 30 minutes. At the end of executive session, we'll take 2-minute recess to get everyone transferred back over to the special meeting.